You ever get the cops called on you for painting your own fence? I have, and not just any old fence. This was the fence around the cabin my folks built with their bare hands back in '72, a place soaked in history, memories, and about a gallon of overpriced teal paint. I wasn't throwing wild parties, I wasn't raising wolves, I wasn't running a tire fire. I was just slapping on a fresh coat of color to cover up the wear and tear of time. And that's when she showed up. Celeste Vaughn, HOA president, self-appointed queen of Willow Creek, marching down my driveway like she was descending from Mount Olympus, heels stabbing the gravel like she was punishing the earth itself. Her lipstick was bright coral, her attitude was darker than motor oil, and she looked at that half-painted fence like I'd spray-painted an expletive across the Declaration of Independence. But Celeste made one fatal mistake. She never checked who actually owned Willow Creek. And that right there, that's where her perfect little empire started to crack. What happened next wasn't just karma, it was karma with steel-toe boots dancing on her front porch. So grab your popcorn, warm up your comment fingers, and tell me where you're watching from, because this payback parade's got a front row seat just for you. It all started on one of those golden Saturday mornings when the birds are chirping, the coffee's strong, and you think, you know what? This old cabin fence could use a little love. Just a splash of teal, a fresh brush, and a whole lot of history she never saw coming. All right, now that Celeste's HOA throne is officially in ashes and the valley's safe, let's turn the mic over to you. What kind of drama should I tackle next? Got a neighbor from HOA hell, a family feud over fence lines, or maybe a revenge story so wild it deserves its own zip code? Drop it in the comments. What would you like me to do next? I wiped my hands on my jeans and tried to keep my voice steady, which is hard to do when someone's yelling, "This is a violation of HOA regulations" at you like she's casting a spell. I told her straight. This cabin's not in her little kingdom. It never has been. And I said it nice, too. "Morning, Celeste. I'm just painting my own fence on my own land." You'd think I'd slap her with a trout. Her face went red, then purple. She pulls out her phone like it's a weapon. "Every inch of Willow Creek falls under my jurisdiction," she huffed, waving it like a wand. Now, I could have let her keep believing that, but just then Doris Haywood, my neighbor and Willow Creek's unofficial historian, wandered over with her coffee, chuckling like she'd seen this show before. "Actually, sweetheart," she said, "Miles' place was grandfathered out long before your HOA even existed, and that's when things got really interesting." Celeste's mouth twitched like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. "Nobody asked you, Doris." But Doris just grinned. She'd seen Celeste take down the Petersons over some lavender shutters and watched her force the Lee family to rip out a beautiful garden. Celeste was 3 for 3 in making neighbors miserable, and now she had her sights set on me. But here's the kicker. She didn't know the rules didn't apply here. Not legally, not morally, not even cosmetically. But when facts don't suit some folks, they reach for force. And sure enough, she jabbed at her phone again and muttered something about local authorities. 20 minutes later, Deputy Roy Tanner rolls up looking like he just wanted a donut and a nap. He stepped out of the cruiser, adjusted his hat, and sighed. "Got a call about some illegal construction?" I handed him my deed before he could even finish the question. He scanned it, then smiled. "All clear here," he said. "Cabin's been here since 1972. HOA wasn't even a glint in a clipboard's eye back then." Celeste's face nearly imploded. "This is corruption!" she screamed. "You're all in on it." She stomped off, leaving divots in the gravel, and the air smelling faintly of rage and designer perfume. But she wasn't done, not by a long shot. That evening, Cal, my godson, and the best thing to come out of the tech world since AutoSafe, showed me a post on the Willow Creek HOA page, a blurry photo of my cabin with the caption, "I saw Rui." The comments section lit up with everything from shack alert to fire hazard. And that's when I felt it. The slow, steady shift from amusement to cold, sharp resolve. Now look, I'm no hero. I turn wrenches for a living, drink too much gas station coffee, and I know a thing or two about grease. But I also know when someone's gunning for me. And Celeste Vaughn wasn't just annoyed about a paint color. No, she was playing the long game. And she wanted what I had. What she didn't know What she never bothered to check was that I didn't just own this cabin, I owned every last acre of undeveloped land in Willow Creek, the stuff her developers had been sniffing around for years. Bought up quiet-like by my grandfather through a series of shell companies and held onto like it was buried treasure. So when she came after me with that HOA crown on her head, she didn't realize she was charging into a war she couldn't win. Not with bylaws, not with smear campaigns, not even with her manicured little army. And I was about to show her exactly how big of a mistake she'd made. You'd think after getting embarrassed in front of the sheriff, Celeste Vaughn would have gone home, poured a glass of low-sodium Chardonnay and cooled off. Nope. Instead, she logged on and lit a digital fire. That very night, Cal texted me a screenshot from the Willow Creek HOA page. There it was, a photo of my cabin taken from a creepy angle. Captioned, "Unregulated structure threatens property values. This is why we need enforcement." The comments underneath were uglier than a raccoon fight in a trash can. Folks called my home everything from an eyesore to a code violation in flannel. One even suggested it was a breeding ground for rodents and rebellion. These weren't opinions, they were marching orders. And Celeste? She wasn't just posting, she was recruiting. Stirring up fear, feeding it like sourdough starter, and letting it rise overnight. I watched the comments pile up, and all I could think was, this isn't about paint, this is about power, and I just became her public enemy number one. Stick with me, because she was just getting warmed up. 2 days later, I opened the mailbox and saw it, the thick kind of envelope that sweats intimidation. Return address, Willow Creek HOA. Inside, a letter that read like it was written in legalese and spite. Notice of non-compliance. Unauthorized alteration to exterior structure. Immediate remediation required. Translation, take down your fence or I'll take you to court. Remediate is a fancy way of saying bow down, but I wasn't born with a white flag in my hand. Still, reading those words, it hit different. My parents built that fence. My dad hauled every board by hand. My mom painted it teal with a kitchen sponge when brushes were too expensive. That fence wasn't just wood. It was a boundary between who we were and what the world tried to turn us into. I held the letter and felt that old, familiar anger, not the loud kind, the slow kind. The kind that climbs your spine and settles in your jaw. Celeste thought a piece of paper could erase my family's history. She really didn't understand who she was dealing with. Later that night, I pulled out one of my mom's old photo albums, the one with the duct-taped spine and Polaroids curling at the edges. There she was, standing barefoot in the dirt, belly full with me, laughing as she slapped teal paint on that same fence. My dad stood behind her with a hammer in one hand and a soda in the other. They looked tired, sweaty, happy, like they had just carved out their corner of the world and dared anyone to take it. I stared at that picture for a long time, then I called Cal. "I want everything on Celeste Vaughn," I said. "Where she came from, who she sued, what she's hiding. I want her calendar, her credit score, her kindergarten report card if we can find it." Cal chuckled, but he was already typing. "Let's see what dust she's been sweeping under her rug," I muttered. Because this wasn't about HOA rules anymore. This was about the Queen of the Creek trying to burn the village to prove she ruled it. Morning came, and with it, vandalism. I stepped outside with my usual cup of cheap coffee, and there it was, spray-painted in red across my beautiful teal fence. "Tear it down!" 4 words, each dripping like blood from a fresh wound. The paint was still wet. The gravel by the fence showed high-heeled divots and cigarette ash. Someone had taken their time. I didn't curse, didn't yell, just stood there, sipping my coffee like I was watching a storm form over the valley. This wasn't some punk kid with a grudge. This was a message. Celeste wasn't hiding behind bylaws anymore. She'd stepped out into the open. She wasn't just crossing the line. She was drawing it in gasoline and daring me to strike the match. You want to know how bullies work? They poke and poke, hoping you'll swing first so they can play the victim. But I wasn't here for her drama. I was here for the truth. And truth, when you stack it brick by brick, becomes a wall they can't climb. Keep watching. Things were about to get loud. I didn't call the sheriff. Not yet. Instead, I walked back inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and started building my war chest. I created a folder, Vaughn Strategy. Inside, I dropped photos, documents, every interaction, every insult, every flyer, comment, and now, the graffiti. I emailed the HOA and requested a list of violations they'd cited over the past 5 years. Cal sent over his first findings: 3 civil lawsuits, 2 out-of-court settlements, and 1 disbarred real estate license back in Nevada. Apparently, Celeste used to flip homes until the courts flipped her bank account inside out. She's not just angry, Cal said, she's broke. That explained a lot. HOA fines, threats, and community campaigns weren't about order. They were her side hustle. She was turning neighborly tension into a cottage industry, and I was the new cash cow she couldn't milk. Only problem for her, I had deeper roots than she thought and a lot more patience than she could afford. So I sharpened my tools, I tightened my strategy, and I started planning not just how to beat her, but how to expose her. You won't believe how fast her empire starts to crack. Stay close. This fire's just getting started. Before you go, let me ask you this. What would you do if someone spray-painted your legacy in red and called it an eyesore? Because next time, we're diving straight into fake officials, shady meetings, and a developer who thinks I can't smell a land grab when it's wearing cologne. You're not going to want to miss how deep this HOA rabbit hole goes. So hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and drop a comment below if you've ever had to stand your ground. Trust me, the next part, it's where the storm really starts. There's a special kind of delusion that happens when someone believes their title gives them actual power. Celeste Vaughn didn't just think she ran the HOA. She thought she ran Willow Creek like it was her personal kingdom, and we were all just waiting for her to declare martial law. 3 days after the graffiti, Cal came into the garage holding his laptop like it was ticking. "Boss, you gotta see this," he said, setting it down on my workbench next to a disassembled carburetor. He played the video, and there she was, Celeste, in a blazer so stiff it could stop a bullet, standing in what looked like a boardroom and staring into the camera like she was delivering a presidential address. "Fellow homeowners," she began, "we are facing a crisis. The unregulated Caldwell cabin must be addressed. Effective immediately, I am invoking emergency demolition procedures." I nearly spit out my coffee. I didn't know whether to laugh or get my sledgehammer. But Doris, who'd wandered in with donuts, took one look at the screen and snorted. "That logo in the corner looks like it was designed by a possum with Photoshop." Stick around, because that wasn't the only thing fake in that video. At first glance, the video looked official, low budget but official, but the longer we watched, the shakier it got. The seal behind her was off-center, and the HOA meeting room was clearly a converted basement with laminate flooring. The lighting flickered every time she moved, and when she slammed her folder shut, you could hear a dog barking in the background. "I don't think this was sanctioned," I said. Cal nodded. "She made this in her house." I cross-checked the audio with a clip from her HOA Zoom calls. Same background, hum, same echo. She didn't just fake a video, she faked a vote. And just like that, the game changed. This wasn't about fences or bylaws anymore. Celeste was manufacturing authority like it came in bulk from a warehouse club. Her HOA was less neighborhood unity and more hostile takeover with a garden club badge. And if she was willing to forge a demolition order, what else was she making up? You're going to want to see who shows up next. The next morning, I was elbow deep in a 78 El Camino when a man in a navy blue windbreaker came strolling up my driveway with a clipboard and a camera. He had the vibe of someone trying really hard to look like he belonged in an episode of Dateline. "You the property owner?" he asked, without even saying hello. "That depends," I said. "You got ID?" He flashed something at me real quick, too fast to read, and started snapping photos of the fence, the garage, even my truck. "This is for the HOA's compliance archive," he mumbled. "I've been instructed to document current violations." I stepped out from under the hood and walked up to him. "Mind if I see that badge again? Or maybe your business card?" He hesitated, then stammered something about leaving it in his car and made a beeline back to his sedan like it was on fire. The license plate was a rental. The clipboard was blank. He was no inspector. He was a scarecrow in slacks, and someone had sent him here to make me sweat. But I don't sweat easy, and I definitely don't scare on command. Next move was mine. That night, I sat on the porch with that same photo album from before. My mom leaning on the fence, belly full with me, smiling like the world was simple and safe. She painted that fence with leftover paint from a church picnic, made my dad build it with wood from a scrapyard, and called it our welcome mat to the universe. And now it was a battleground. I stared at her face and realized something. Celeste wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation or devalue my land. She was trying to erase my roots, the kind of woman who builds nothing but wants to control everything. I ran my hand over the grain of the porch rail. Same wood, same hands, same blood. But they're about to find out. Because there comes a point where defending your property stops being about pride and starts being about principle. And if you've ever had someone try to take something your family built, you know exactly what that feels like. We're not done yet, not even close. Just before midnight, Cal called. "Boss, we got her." "Got what?" I asked. He sent me a blurry still frame. It was Celeste, standing outside the Java Nest downtown, locked in conversation with a man in a suit that looked like it cost more than my truck. "That's Silas Trent," Cal said. "Developer, real estate shark. He's been trying to buy up land across the valley for years. Quietly, he uses shell companies, keeps his name off the paperwork until the last second." I leaned back in my chair. Suddenly the fake video, the phony inspector, the vandalism, they weren't random. They were phase 1. This wasn't about HOA aesthetics. This was a coordinated land grab. And Celeste wasn't just the face of it, she was the bait. "Boss," Cal said, "this ain't about the fence, it's about the valley." I nodded slowly. "Then we hit back where it hurts. Let's find out just how much dirt this suit's been walking on." And just like that, my little teal fence fight became a full-blown war for Willow Creek. You'll want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, because what we find next changes everything. When two snakes slither up your porch with a smile and a contract, you don't offer them sweet tea. You check your boots for venom. Celeste showed up that Thursday afternoon like she was leading a parade, flanked by none other than Silas Trent himself. Slick suit, too much cologne, and the kind of fake grin that screams, "Don't leave your wallet unattended." She didn't waste time. "Miles," she purred, "we've come with a generous solution. $100,000. Cash. You can take that money and buy yourself a nice trailer, somewhere peaceful. No more headaches, no more legal drama." I blinked. $100,000? I said, like I'd misheard. "That wouldn't buy a decent view in Willow Creek, let alone the valley." "That's the offer," Silas added, sliding a manila folder toward me. "It's more than fair for this rustic parcel." I looked down at the folder like it might bite. These two weren't offering a deal. They were handing me bait, and they expected me to bite like a starving dog. "Stay with me, 'cause this is where things start flipping." I picked up the folder, flipped it open, and skimmed the contract. It was written in that oily corporate lingo where everything sounds friendly but every clause has teeth. I let the silence hang, then said, "So, just to be clear, if I sign this, you'll leave me alone?" Celeste nodded, smug as a cat who thinks she owns the house. "We'll even help you relocate," she added. "There's a lovely manufactured home park just outside town with—" "Stop," I said, raising a hand. "You're really telling me to sell my grandfather's land, my parents' home, and every memory that goes with it for the price of a used sedan?" She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her answer. "Buy a nice trailer," I said, repeating her words like you're selling timeshares in hell. Their smiles faltered. I stood, walked over to the side cabinet, and pulled out a leather-bound folder. "Let me show you what this land's actually worth." I laid down deed after deed on the table, one for the North Ridge, One for the Lower Creek Flats, one for the acreage behind the HOA clubhouse. Celeste leaned in, her coral lipstick twitching. "What is this?" she asked, her voice losing polish. "This," I said, "is what happens when you try to lowball a man who's got the receipts. My grandfather bought up every acre of undeveloped land in Willow Creek over 40 years ago, quietly, through trusts and shell companies. My dad kept it going, and now it's all in my hands." Silas started flipping through the documents, his mouth tightening. "This can't be right. Check the parcel numbers," I said, pointing to one in particular. "One?" I smiled. "That's the land your HOA office sits on. Technically, I've been leasing it to you for $1 a year since 1982. Lease is up next spring. You ever watch a power-hungry person realize they've been building their castle on sand? It's beautiful. Keep listening. This next part's even better." Right on cue, Doris Haywood appeared at the edge of my driveway, holding her iPad like a gospel. "Miles," she called. "You want me to show him?" "Go ahead, Doris," I said, waving her in. She tapped a few buttons, then turned the screen toward Celeste. "County records, tax maps, all public, honey. He owns half the valley, including that parking lot where you host your bake sales." Celeste looked like someone had unplugged her brain and rebooted it with dial-up. Silas stepped back like he'd been caught shoplifting. "This changes things," he muttered. "No," I said, "this reveals things. Y'all weren't just trying to push me out. You were planning to scoop up the land on the cheap and turn Willow Creek into condos with cute names like the Pines at Prosperity." Her face cycled through emotions like a slot machine. Shock, denial, rage, panic. But the payout was zero. She looked like a swan in church shoes, poised on the outside, paddling like hell underneath. And trust me, she was about to sink. The next day, I did what folks like Celeste hate most. I went public. I posted a long message on the Willow Creek forum with a picture of my family's cabin, my dad's hammer, and my newly painted teal fence. Then I laid it all out. My family's history, the land we preserved, the deals they tried to make behind closed doors. I ended it with this. This land isn't for sale, because it was never just property. It was a promise. One my parents kept. One I intend to keep. The response was immediate. Dozens of neighbors shared their memories, their thanks, their support. Even folks I hadn't spoken to in years commented. And the best part? People started asking questions. Why was Celeste really pushing this so hard? Who was this Silas guy? And why did the HOA president suddenly look like she'd bitten into a lemon wrapped in litigation? As for me, I wasn't celebrating just yet. I knew Celeste would come back with something slimy, but now the spotlight was on her, and when snakes get caught in the light, they either slither away or get stomped. Wait till you see which she chooses next. If this story hit a little too close to home or reminded you of that one neighbor with a clipboard and a god complex, do me a favor. Share this video with a friend who's dealing with their own HOA headache. Sometimes the best thing you can give someone is proof they're not alone. And if this made you laugh, nod, or just want to build a fence out of spite, leave a comment below and tell me what you think. I read every one. The war for Willow Creek's just heating up. And trust me, you won't believe what Celeste tries next. When people don't win in private, they throw a party in public. And Celeste Vaughn threw herself a parade. I woke up Saturday morning to the sound of voices chanting down the road. Stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, and there they were, a crowd of HOA board members. Some actual neighbors, a few confused tourists, probably looking for the farmer's market, and banners with bold red letters that screamed, "Save Willow Creek," and "Tear down the teal." One woman even held a handmade sign that said, "HOA rules equals harmony," which was rich considering Celeste had rewritten half those rules on cocktail napkins and ego. I squinted through the crowd until I saw her, front and center in her power blazer, waving like a discount queen at a local pageant. I almost applauded. She didn't just double down, she'd built a soapbox, a stage, and a fake audience to cheer her on. But I had something better than signs and slogans. I had paperwork. Stick around, I brought receipts. I waited until the noise hit its peak, then walked down the driveway with a thick folder in hand, calm as a banker on bonus day. "Folks," I said, holding up the deeds like playing cards, "I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I believe your protest is parked on my property." Silence. Just long enough for Celeste's fake smile to falter. I flipped open the first deed. North Creek Trailhead. That bench you're leaning on? I said to one of the board members, "Leased to the town by my grandfather." Next card. Upper Ridge Lot 9. That stretch of road you marched down? Heads turned, eyes widened. Celeste's knuckles went white on her clipboard. "And this one?" I held it up. "The land under your precious HOA building." Didn't need a mic to drop. The look on her face was better than fireworks. And just like that, the crowd started to wobble. Truth has a funny way of cutting through slogans. Of course, Celeste wasn't about to go down quiet. The very next morning, the fire marshal showed up at my garage. "Morning, Miles," he said, looking more apologetic than official. "Got a complaint. Flammable stored near dry brush." I nodded and handed him a coffee. We both knew it was nonsense. We walked the whole perimeter, documented every bucket and barrel. He sighed when we finished. "He's filing complaints faster than we can clear them." By lunch, the IRS rumors started. Cal called me in a hurry. "Boss, she's telling people your business is under federal review. My buddy at the coffee shop overheard her bragging about a cousin who knows someone in tax enforcement." That's when I realized she was playing attrition. If she couldn't beat me with boards and banners, she'd drown me in red tape and rumors. But here's the thing. You don't rattle a mechanic by throwing tools at him. You just make him tighten the bolts. And I was about to lock this thing down. That night, I sat on the porch, same coffee mug in hand, and wrote a message to the town. I posted it on the Willow Creek Community Board with a photo of my parents building the cabin, my dad holding a beam, my mom painting that now infamous fence. I told the story of how they came here with nothing but a dream and a toolbox, how every nail in that cabin held more love than most mansions. I didn't ask for sympathy, I asked for memory. And I reminded people that community isn't built by rules, it's built by people who show up when things fall apart. Within hours, the replies came flooding in. Neighbors shared their own stories, how my dad fixed their cars for free, how my mom used to leave baskets of vegetables on doorsteps during hard winters. The tide was turning, not because I fought louder, but because the truth came wrapped in roots, not regulations. But Celeste? She wasn't done spinning. Just before midnight, Cal burst through my front door, laptop under one arm, a grin like he'd found buried treasure. "Boss, you're going to want to see this." He pulled up a spreadsheet he'd been quietly assembling. Payments, account names, transaction IDs. She's been siphoning HOA dues into 2 shell companies, both linked to a P.O. box in Nevada. He clicked through records, like a magician revealing each trick. They're not just planning a development, they've been funding it with community money. My jaw tightened. "You sure?" "Every penny," he said. "They even paid that fake inspector through one of the LLCs. I leaned back in my chair, whistled low. They tried to paint me as the problem, while she was holding the brush, the paint, and the receipt. We didn't just have suspicion now, we had evidence, and it was almost time to show the town who'd really been playing dirty. But first, we needed one more push, one more move to make the whole house of cards collapse. You won't believe what we found next. It was standing room only at the Willow Creek town meeting, and the tension was so thick you could have patched a leaky roof with it. Folks packed the rec hall wall to wall, neighbors, reporters, curious outsiders who'd heard the rumors about the man with the teal fence and the HOA president losing her grip on reality. At the front, Celeste Vaughn stood in a navy power suit so tight I swear it was holding in her last ounce of composure. She walked up to the podium like she was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award and began her pitch. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, smoothing her stack of papers like it made her sound more official. "Willow Creek is sitting on a gold mine of untapped land. We have the chance to turn this outdated, underused area into a thriving public park and wellness center. A $3 million 0-cent grant from the state is on the table, but only if we act now. Through the process of eminent domain, we can reclaim the Caldwell property for the good of all. She smiled, the kind of smile a shark gives before it eats something slow. But I wasn't about to be her bait. The room buzzed with low murmurs, some skeptical, others intrigued. Celeste knew exactly what she was doing, dressing greed up as civic duty. A wellness center sounded great until you realized she wanted to gut my family's land to build it, and likely pave the rest for eco-housing that just happened to include a bonus for her developer pal. I stood up slowly and walked to the front, carrying a folder and a face full of calm. "If I may," I said, "it seems I've become the villain in this fairy tale." Celeste folded her arms and gave me a look like I'd tracked mud onto her marble floor. "I'm just trying to help the community," she muttered. "Funny," I replied, "because I brought some folks who'd like to share how your last few helping hands turned out." I turned toward the back. "Patricia, you ready?" And just like that, the air changed. Patricia Williams, sharp as ever in her Sunday best, stepped forward and faced the crowd. "My name's Patricia," she said, "and 5 years ago I trusted Ms. Vaughn with my retirement. She promised me land in Nevada, said it was part of an up-and-coming community project. I lost everything. Turns out the land was swamp and the documents were doctored." Another woman stood. "She scammed my uncle in Arizona. Same story. Fake development deal, real bankruptcy." A man in a flannel raised his hand. "She got me too, Colorado. She's been state hopping with the same con for over a decade." The room fell into a hush heavy enough to bend wood. Celeste's face started to twitch like someone had just pulled the plug on her power source, but I wasn't done. "See," I said, "this isn't about parks or grants or saving the valley. It's about profit and power and silencing the one person who wouldn't play along, who could feel it, public opinion tilting like a boat with too much weight on one side. Keep listening. This is where the boat tips." I pulled out my next move like a magician yanking a rabbit from a hardbacked folder. "Now for the money," I said. "You've heard about the HOA funds going missing. My team found them. 2 shell companies, 1 P.O. box, over $180,000, 0 cents diverted from HOA dues into private accounts tied to Ms. Vaughn." I clicked the remote. A projection lit up the screen. Transaction records, emails, even a memo from Celeste authorizing a payment for consulting services that led right back to her own name. "And this?" I said, clicking again. A video played. Celeste in black clothes spray painting my teal fence. The vandalism she blamed on unidentified criminals? That was her. Filing a false police report. And the fake inspector? Paid through one of those companies. The crowd gasped. Mayor Thompson dropped his pen. Sheriff Royce Tanner stood from the back and crossed his arms like a man already halfway to an arrest. Celeste opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her voice had lost its script. Her plan had lost its scaffolding. And then came the moment I'd been saving. "I know there's fear," I said, "about what happens to this land, so let me clear that up." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the final document. 3 weeks ago, I signed every one of the 800 acres my family owns into a permanent conservation trust, legally protected, non-developable, forever. Murmurs erupted. Someone clapped. A woman in the third row shouted, "Bless you!" as Elise's shoulders dropped like someone had yanked her batteries out. "You tried to steal a fence," I said, locking eyes with her, "and ended up building a preserve." The irony hit like thunder. She tried to make me the villain, tried to pave over my roots for profit, and ended up triggering the largest land protection initiative Willow Creek had ever seen. In trying to bury me, Celeste dug her own grave, right in the soil she hoped to steal. And now, finally, the shovel was out of her hands. Sheriff Tanner walked down the aisle slowly, like a man who's had enough foolishness for one lifetime. "Celeste Vaughn," he said, "you're under arrest for fraud, filing false reports, misappropriation of funds, and conspiracy to commit property theft." The last thing she said before being escorted out was, You have no idea who you're dealing with." I smiled. "Ma'am, that's exactly what you said before you tried to demolish a fence." The audience erupted. Laughter, applause, relief, but more than that, a shift. For the first time in a long time, people remembered what community was supposed to feel like. That night, I walked back up to the cabin, lit by porch light and moonlight, and sat beside my dad's old hammer and my mother's paintbrush. The teal fence stood tall and proud, just like them, and now it would stand forever. If you've ever stared down a petty tyrant with nothing but the truth and a paintbrush, you know how sweet this moment feels. Share this video with someone who needs that reminder that legacy beats ego and roots always run deeper than noise. And if you've got a story like mine, drop it in the comments. I read them all, because trust me, somewhere out there is another Celeste in a fresh blazer and another neighbor who's going to need to know they're not alone. So that's how it ended. Not with a fight, not with a bulldozer, but with a paintbrush. A truth too heavy to ignore, and a fence that refused to fall. Celeste came for what she thought was just land, quiet, unmapped, unprotected. But what she ran into was a legacy, nailed down by history, painted by love, and held up by a man who wasn't going to trade his roots for a quick payout. She tried to tear it down and ended up building a preserve. And me? I got to keep the cabin, the land, the quiet. And I got something else, too. A community that remembered who we are when no one's trying to sell it back to us with a smile. Stories like this don't just happen in small towns. They happen anywhere someone with a clipboard and a fake smile tries to turn power into a weapon. So, if this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of something worth protecting, or someone who stood tall when they were supposed to back down, send it to a friend, share it with someone who's got a Celeste in their life. Because what we just walked through together, it wasn't just about land, it was about standing up when it's easier to stay quiet, and doing the right thing even when it costs you sleep. Here's the truth. You don't have to be rich or loud or powerful to win. You just have to be right. And be ready. The fence didn't win because it was beautiful. It won because it was built by people who refused to be pushed off their story. And maybe that's what we're all doing here, fighting to keep our stories from being paved over. So let me hear yours. Drop a comment and tell me what this story made you feel. Tell me what you've had to defend. And if you want more stories like this, true ones, hard-earned ones, click like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications, because trust me, we're just getting started. And the next story might be yours. Before we wrap, I want to hear from you. What kind of story should we dive into next? HOA horror? Neighborhood revenge? A comeback story with a twist? Drop your ideas in the comments. I just might turn your suggestion into the next episode. Your stories fuel this channel, so let's build the next one together.